A primary bathroom is one of the most complicated rooms in the entire home. And there's a lot to manage, from waterproofing to balancing the air, even the way the light is sequenced in the space. A lot can go wrong. In a space like this, a lot of the important work is invisible. Waterproofing strategy is really important to a wet room like this. This is a big space, there's a tub as well as a shower all underneath this monolithic stone. So for us, we want to make sure that we're working with one system for all of the waterproofing, which is why we use the Schluter product. We also worked with them on the floor heat. So from a waterproofing strategy, it's really important to use one system so we are getting that warranty, but also that consistency and making sure that we are protecting the investment behind the beautiful marble that we ended up installing here. The floor heat is really about comfort. This isn't about heating the space. It's not about feeling hot on the floor, but it is really to keep the marble, especially in a room where there's so much stone, warm. It's really part of building a space like this that is designed to be elevated in terms of experience. The shower floor is actually one slab of marble. We had originally designed it with a center drain that had 4 slabs of marble kind of in a trapezoid shape back down to the drain in order to get the pitch that we needed to make sure that the shower drained appropriately. We went back to the fabricator and actually spoke to them about milling the top of the slab. Now, these slabs are thin. They're only 3/4 of an inch at the thickest, so we didn't know if we'd actually be able to accomplish the proper pitch by milling the top of the stone, never mind getting to a point where it's too thin and the slab would break. So the fabricator actually came back to us with an idea. We ended up laminating that slab to a thicker slab. We're able to 3-dimensionally mill the top of the slab, so there's actually no seams. The entire pitch of the shower is done out of one slab by milling the top of that slab and then going back and repolishing it. This goes way back to framing and building the house, even as far as when we 3-dimensionally modeled the home in the framing stage. We are always recessing the subfloor, and the reason we do that is we want to make sure that our finished floor always has the opportunity to be flush with the adjacent floor. And in the primary, we have wood floor adjacent to blue marble. And we wanted to make sure that we had the adjustability to meet those and make those elevations perfect. Blue Celeste was chosen for a lot of reasons. The stone itself is a light blue with tints of grays and whites throughout the stone. I think it's beautiful in many ways, but it also is really inspired by the sky and the clouds, which is evident in the skylight in the atrium. Now, if possible, spend a lot of time with the stone supplier as well as the fabricator, making sure that the slabs that were selected would really embody that sky look that we were looking for. It was also really inspired by the Sleeve store that was down in Miami that was built entirely out of this Blue Celeste stone. Across from the wet room, we use the Blue Celeste on the vanity as well. So starting with the floor, we have this small splash pad around the vanity where we prepped for that in the framing as well. And then we fabricated the vanity completely out of marble. So our mill workshop material ended up building essentially the carcass for the vanity itself, which was the internals or the guts of the vanity, but the vanity itself in finish is 100% the marble. And we did that by incorporating a completely custom-made sink, and then the doors on the front of the vanity were also milled in a way that we could epoxy in these wood blanks, reducing the weight of the doors from 100% weight of the stone to about 40% of the weight of the stone, which allowed us to use traditional cabinet hinges. And when it's closed, it looks as though it's this kind of cubic, one-piece blue marble vanity. But when you open it up, you realize that they're very traditional cabinet doors. And then furthermore, we have storage on the inside of that. The sink itself is separated in 2 sections, and in the center, you have the Vola controls for the faucetry. I really appreciate the way that the vanity was designed in because of the way the faucetry and even the doors work. The doors are full height and kind of capturing the sink behind them. We have a small drip edge, so if the vanity gets wet, the water doesn't run down the backside of the doors. And then behind the sink, the faucet actually sits on this ledge that is lower and tucked behind the sink itself. So really leaving the sink as uninterrupted as we can, and making the faucetry kind of a statement piece, but a really quiet statement piece. And when we're using materials like Blue Celeste, we don't want the faucetry or the hardware to be as much of a statement piece as you would typically see, and instead we want it to be subtle and quiet, and allow the marble to do a lot of the showing off. The Vola faucetry is used throughout the entire home. We have the faucets on the vanity, we have the tub filler, and we have the shower controls and the shower head. From a design perspective, they're designed to be very simple and geometric, but they're really high quality Danish fixtures. And where we're using such an expressive stone, we want the faucetry to be more subtle. They are kind of small jewels on the surface, and not designed to be the statement piece. This room itself is really designed to be a statement, not just the fixtures and faucetry by itself. The finish on them is a brushed stainless, which is pretty consistent throughout the entire home. It is the metal that you see on the outside of the home, and it's the metal that you see on all of the custom door hardware, as well as the faucetry in the rest of the space. One of the challenges from actually building the space was the large glass splash panel. We actually installed the glass ahead of a lot of the finishes, and the detailing on the glass is really specific and takes a lot of coordination. So all of the glass is actually installed in what we call a recessed channel. So when you look at the floor, the entire piece of glass actually drops below the floor. Same thing with the wall and the ceiling. So if you think about how that gets installed, it really has to go in a very specific sequence, because you do want it on top of the waterproofing layer, which means your waterproofing is installed in the shower, but you want it buried behind the stone, the wood flooring, and even the plaster. So that glass got installed really early on and had to be protected as we brought all of the finishes up to it, and allows for this really full height, almost invisible glass panel that ultimately protects the shower from spraying out of the space. Details like that take months of coordination and just really force us to be thinking about the project and the results specifically way before we're putting it together. When you're standing at the vanity, there's actually a lot of detail that's easy to miss unless you really look for it. And one of those details is the curved wall that's on either side of the vanity. When you're looking directly on, it's almost hard to realize that it curves, but it actually hides this reversed LED strip. And what that LED is doing is it's actually creating a soft light across the plaster, and is way more flattering to be looking in the mirror with that soft light reflecting back on your face, rather than a direct light or even an overhead light. So that was a really specific and intentional move from a design perspective that we knew was really important to get right. So when we were plastering, the guys took their time to make sure that that curve was actually done with a template and there was consistency. So that way when it was lit up, you kind of got this really consistent light reflecting back on you. There's a handful of things that had to be really carefully coordinated. Number one, we wanted to make sure that the medicine cabinet was installed in a way that wouldn't hit the faucetry. There's a lot of tight clearances here, and ultimately we wanted to make sure that that was thoughtful. We don't want the medicine cabinet to be swinging in the direction that ultimately impacts the faucet. It sounds like an easy thing to make sure that it is done, but when you're dealing with really oversized mirrors and cabinets and specific faucet details, that is something that we had to be mindful of going into it. Between the two cabinets, we installed just a traditional mirror. Thankfully, the medicine cabinets we installed here were actually 3/16 plate mirror. So when we installed the mirror on the wall, we were able to use the exact same thickness, and it prevented us from having the funhouse effect, but also prevented us from having slightly different colors between the two mirrors themselves. Now, outside of the vanity, we have these 12-foot tall pivot doors. And on the inside, we have another mirror that you can use as a full body mirror. But behind the doors, you have this cabinetry. And on the bottom, you have a bunch of pull-out drawers, and then you have shelves. And then you have shelves way up high for all the stuff that you don't necessarily use all the time. You can use it for storage. But ultimately, it didn't make sense for us to not utilize that space, even though it was kind of out of reach. So we said, let's make a full height cabinet and have the doors be full height. And part of the reason we wanted the doors to be full height was really just, we didn't want them to feel like cabinets. We didn't want it to feel as though it was a door. When they're closed, they're plastered. They don't feel as though they're something that you need to get into. But when you need that additional space or you need to get something, those doors open up, 90 degrees and give you full access to these two beautiful linen cabinets on either side. Now, there's a lot of architectural moves in this space, and one of the things that we kind of skipped over right in the beginning was the pocket doors coming into the space. The home is designed to flow. The space can be enjoyed with those pocket doors open, and the doors are really buried in part of the wall. There's no casing, there's no jamb, and they're full height to the ceiling. So you can really enjoy this space with the natural light that comes in from either side. We built a lot of bathrooms and a lot of spaces that take a tremendous amount of thought and consideration and planning and pre-construction going into it. But this one really challenged us to think about the project all the way to the end result before ever stepping foot on site, all the way back to how we prep the framing, thinking about how we're getting pieces of material in here, how the zero threshold transitions are gonna work between plaster and stone and wood and glass. And all of that to be considered in a way that felt true and real to the materials, ultimately give us the result that we ended up with today.